Good minion, good! Save the organs for Mimi!
There are many elites in Warhammer Fantasy, monstrous mutations of Clan Molder with years of science and warp tokens invested, and bulls made of brass blessed by the dark gods, but there is nothing quite so elite as a horde of 6-foot-tall, heavily armored rat people. Obviously, it's the mightiest best army in all Skavendom, yes, and Clan Rictus is about to put them to the test. In reality, both these armies leave a lot to be desired, and we'll talk about why, but this is a perfect matchup for the memes. On one side, we have a Beastman Brayherd going for the Vanguard strats, with a core of powerful characters and Tier 5 monsters, led by Torox the Brass Bull, and on the other side, we have a Stormvermin core, upgraded to the gills, gold chevrons all across the board. The only support they'll have this battle is from Tretch Craventail, which honestly doesn't mean a whole lot, Morskitter's Hellion, the Mutant Rat Ogre that discharges Warp Lightning in melee, and a Plague Priest on foot, Vermintide, Pestilent Breath, and Bless from Filth. So why is this army bad? Well, it's Stormvermin, which are only occasionally good in very small doses. Skaven have no ability here whatsoever, no range firepower, and a Trash Can Lord who offers next to nothing. Clearly a build for busting out the lulz rather than being actually competitive. And remember that at its core, Warhammer 2 multiplayer is about striking a balance, towing that line of build roulette. You want to either make an army that can combat a multitude of threats, no matter what your opponent tries to throw at you, or make a highly specialized army that will absolutely face roll a particular build that you suspect your opponent will pick. Of course, there's no way to know for sure what your opponent will bring in a battle, just educated guesses, so if you go all in with a build, sometimes it loses. No matter what you do, no matter how well you play, as long as the other guy does the bare minimum necessary, you simply aren't going to win. That's just part of the game. We call that losing at the selection screen. Thing is, both these armies lost at the selection screen because both of them are ass. The Beastman army is not well suited for dealing with really any of the typical Skaven builds. It's not well balanced. It has casters on foot instead of chariots, has a bunch of big monsters that are perfect targets for artillery and ratlings and Jezzails. It's a Vanguard ambush with no teeth, led by Ungor Herd first into the breach, and it's lacking perhaps the most underrated of all Beastman units, the Ungor Raider. So it's all bad. Everything sucks. Both armies are poopy McButthole, which should make it an entertaining show, right? Should be a good time. See what happens. And we'll get things kicked off with an Ungor charge that has absolutely zero hope of survival, which is fine. That's why you bring them, to meet shield and die while the real Beastmen have all the fun. Ungor Herd popping like pustules while the Ratmen Anvil holds them in place. But naturally, Morskitter's Hellion has a lot of weight to carry this battle, being the only unit on the Skaven side with even an ounce of maneuverability, which means Beastmen will likely make it their top priority for killing. Don't expect much from a Rat Ogre against the Bloodbrute Behemoth and Torox. If they're able to make contact with them, that is not a fair fight at all. Certainly one thing the Stormvermin Corps is good at doing, though, is killing chaff infantry. They can hold the line and beat down an innumerable amount of them. It's one of the highest leadership Skaven armies you will ever see. And the Sword and Board Storms have 58 melee attack from all those gold chevrons. It'll actually be the Broodmother Jabberslythe coming in for a free throw line slam on the Morskitter's Hellion, and a Spirit Leech from the Bray Shaman, knocking it out of the ballpark. And support from the Stormvermin Halberds. He's already down to half HP. That was quite the wombo combo from the Beastmen monsters, going right for the Mutant Rat Ogre. I don't think they missed a single attack on the way in, and a minute into this battle, one of the Skaven's most important units is limping desperately away to trying to get some space. It's not an A-bomb or a Brood Horror or even a Gorgon. No regen for him means as he comes in for the RKO, he's got to be really careful around that armor-sundering Broodmother. But nice attack. That's how you want to use him when the monsters are inside the stabbing arc of all these Stormvermin. That is when Morskitter's Hellion can strike. But meanwhile, the Gorgon is actually performing the role the Jabberslythe probably should be. He's the one beating up on all the infantry while the Broodmother goes after the single entity. Obviously, if the Bloodbrute Behemoth was able to get on top of Morskitter's Hellion, that Rat Ogre is dead in about 5 seconds flat. It just will not be able to survive that kind of engagement for long. Skaven do have one big advantage here, though, and that is the fact that each and every Beastman unit is melee only. This is a pure CQB rush. So they're forced to go in and fight with seriously roided up gold chevron Stormvermin, some of which have halberds, which is not ideal for the big scary monsters. Clearly not the type of army you expect to deal with when matched up against the Ratmen. I'll be very curious to see how the Cloven ones handle it. Looking like it might already be end of the road for the Mutant Rat Ogre. Spirit Leech going down on him. He was face down with Torax, and he had no HP anyway, so he's rounding off. Another issue is that the Jabberslice Aura of Madness only activates when enemy leadership drops below half. So there's no Mortis effect popping off right now. There's no AoE drain, and that's what the Jabber needs to get through all these bodies. Stormvermin don't rout, baby. Bravest, best warriors in all the world, yes, yes. But one thing the Jabberslice is always good for is some good old-fashioned body slams from the top rope, sending the whole goddamn Raki army flying to the moon. Ratmen space program while the Gorgon spends entirely too much time in the middle of a bunch of halberds, and Morskitter's Hellion breathes its last breath, sucked dry by foul Beastman sorcery. Forgerland Broodmother about to round off. Gorgon down past half HP at the moment, fighting halberds. Switch those around next time this game happens, my dude. Get that Gorgon on top of Morskitter's Hellion, get the Jabberslice dealing with most of the infantry, and you'll be in a better spot. At the moment, it's not an utter disaster, but I'd say Stormvermin are surging. They've certainly beaten up a lot of the infantry, and the monsters without any of that foot support might be in a bit of a predicament dealing with all these halberds and incredibly high leadership elite tier Stormvermin. My god, their swarm is unstoppable. Their bodacious Ratmen booties undeniable. Torax beat the brakes off of that poor Plague Priest. Didn't quite finish him off. I expect that caster to return to the fold. Gorgon does have the regen in melee, but typically not going to get enough of that to counteract all the damage going his way from armor-piercing bonus versus large halberds. And Torax is well and truly surrounded, and I think he's given up on life. He's just not swinging those Rune Tortured Axes at all. He just said, you know what, I'm done with this game. Kill me now, please. Nice Flock of Doom. Gorgeous. Catching 4 or 5 high-value infantry models in there, or infantry units rather. But even with the brass body popping off, even with Torax's glorious exaltations, this Howls to the Moon will go unanswered. The Dark Gods are not here for the forces of chaos and the Cloven Ones this day. It is about to be army losses and a mass rout headed the way of the Beastman Bray herds, and a ridiculous Stormvermin core will carry the battle. And not only that, it's a heroic victory. You don't see that very often. In fact, one of the only ways to do so is to go for these incredibly elite meme tier armies. That's usually the only way that is ever going to happen. Heroic victories in multiplayer do not occur but once in a blue moon. A very rare harvest blue moon. What a weird game. What a strange game from XMT SlateX and Animesis. And while I think we can rightfully point out the flaws in both builds here, it's important to remember that you don't know what your opponent will field. And when they do something like this, there's literally no way to go into a match with an army built specifically to counter the deadly, the dastardly, the devilish Stormvermin meme core. Still though, there are some things you could potentially do to mitigate the damage of facing down that type of build, should you ever be in the same situation as Animesis here. So, if you're the Beastmen, and you're stuck with this build against a most powerful elite Stormvermin army, the way you'd want to handle this is probably overload one flank, get all your melee troops on one side, force the Skaven to overcommit and blob up, hit them over and over with Flock of Doom, then get Torax and all the big monsters slamming into a single unit, psychocharging over and over, just using them kind of like a wrecking ball, bouncing from one unit to the next over and over, and they can't really do anything to stop that. They don't have any maneuverability. What you cannot do is keep your monsters in melee, in the middle of a horde of angry halberds. Your Gorgon and your Jabberslice will not appreciate that very much. The other thing you could do here is bring Savage Dominion, and maybe some Chariots too. Skip the Deathcaster, skip Aspect of the Dread Knight and Spirit Leech. Cygors are a solid option versus Skaven, especially when they are summons. They provide some extra terror in the late game if you need another one, and if Skaven brought artillery, they're wasting time shooting a unit that will crumble out soon anyway, and your fast movers should be good enough for shutting down the range play as Beastmen. A Cygor summon here would have completely devastated Slade's army. Every single big-ass boulder tossed into the ranks, generating insane value against huge blocks of expensive gold chevron infantry. Would have been glorious. But even just some regular Ungor archers, man, shooting into the halberds, value city right there. But okay, again, let's pretend he has the exact same army he brought. We have no benefit of hindsight for picking a different army. He has the same army. As soon as this battle starts, and you see that all your opponent has is all melee Stormvermin, pull the Ungor Vanguard force back. Zero reason to go in right away. There's no reason for it. You're going to lose all that infantry before your monsters even really have time to get up there, because now the Stormvermin have, what, 58 melee attack with their gold chevrons? Ungor infantry just can't hold up to that, so wait, pull them back, reposition. There's no benefit to the Vanguard at that point. You Vanguard to close the gap against ranged troops. There are no ranged troops. Take your time. Use Flock of Doom. Take your time with the Monster Death Ball. Bouncing from unit to unit, getting supply charges in. You've got the speed advantage still. You've got the heavier hitters. Draw them out. Wear them down. Make it a war of attrition. And if you keep that Jabber alive long enough for the Mortis effect to start kicking in, and the Stormvermin to start dropping below half leadership and half health, you then have the win condition you need to carry you into the late game. So, interesting. Don't see a heroic victory every day. So thanks to Slade for the memes. Thanks to Animesis for the GGs. And I will see all of you in the next video. Any Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.